want to say on this, we're missing something. We can't just talk about the Biden economy because the economy, energy, and national security are all tied together. Of course, we're paying too much for our energy in our state, in our country right now. But part of the reason why is because of the Biden policies on energy. We've got a plan right now, the $1.2 trillion of Green New Deal spending buried in the Inflation Creation Act is something that is just subsidizing China. If we're going to stop buying oil from the Middle East and start buying batteries from China, we're just trading OPEC for Sinopec. And then belatedly, the Biden administration says, no, we're going to put sanctions on Russian oil. Well, we put sanctions on Russian oil, well, then it's 20% off. Who's buying it? China. So if you buy a battery in this country, you buy a solar panel, it's being produced in a plant in China powered by coal, where it's being powered by oil and gas at 20% off. And every farmer in this country would like to buy diesel at 20% off, just like they're buying it in China.
Governor Hutchinson, quickly.
Thank you, Grant. Delighted to be here tonight. And
guys, if y'all can hear me, please let me know. This is my first time ever trying to live stream, and it's an epic fail, but, you know, I'm trying. And, yeah, so let me know in the comments. Can y'all hear me at all? If not, oh, you know, I don't know.
Let me just tell you that I'm a pro-life governor from a conservative state that have a conservative record in which I lowered taxes in Arkansas as governor. I created a $2 billion surplus that I passed over to my successor, and I made sure that we shrunk the size of government. We have 14% fewer state employees in Arkansas after I left government than when I took over as governor 8 years ago. I tell that because that's what we need in Washington, D.C. We need somebody who can actually constrain the growth of the federal government, that can actually reduce the size, and I've pledged to reduce by 10% our federal non-defense workforce. That's a specific pledge to make that attacks the administrative state. And let me applaud some of the business partners that are here that have had success in business. But let me tell you, I've been a federal prosecutor. I've served our country in terms of being head of the DEA, in Homeland Security, in times of crisis. And while I think that that's experience that is important for the future of our country, to be the president of the United States that can lead with positive solutions and be held accountable.
Thank you. We have a lot of topics to get to, and I promise we're going to get to everyone if we play within the rules. Okay, next topic. More than 1,000 people are still unaccounted for in Maui after the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. Hawaii's governor and White House officials said that climate change amplified the cost of human error.
And a tropical storm hit California for the first time in
Climate change is gay and retarded.
84 years. The ocean hit 101 degrees off the coast of Florida. And in the last month, the heat wave in the Southwest broke records nearly 50 years old.
So Alexander Diaz from Young America's Foundation has a question.
But one thing they never talk about is how long have we been tracking weather patterns? Not that long in the scope of humanity. And if you look at the history of the globe, it's really not been that long. So how do we know it's so bad right now? Were y'all here thousands of years ago? So were they recording temperatures? I don't think so.
Question for you.
Polls consistently show that young people's #1 issue is climate change. How will you, as both President of the United States and leader of the Republican Party, calm their fears that the Republican Party doesn't care about climate change?
So we want to start on this with a show of hands. Do you believe in human behavior is causing climate change? Raise your hand if you do.
Look, we're not school children. Let's have the debate. I mean, I'm happy to take it to start.
Alexander, so do you want to raise your hand or not?
I don't think that's the way to do. So let me just say to Alexander this.
He basically just told y'all he hates the planet. Kidding.
First of all, one of the reasons our country's decline is because of the way the corporate media treats Republicans versus Democrats. Biden was on the beach while those people were suffering. He was asked about it, and he said, no comment. Are you kidding me? As somebody that's handled disasters in Florida, you got to be activated. You've got to be there. You've got to be present. You've got to be helping people who are doing this. And here's the deal.
So is that a yes? is that a
Stay
yes?
down.
Is that a hand raise?
You do not.
I think it was a hand raise for him, and it's my hands are in my pockets
No,
because
no,
the
I
climate change
didn't
agenda is a
raise a
hoax. Let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax, and we have to declare independence for it. And the reality is, the anti-carbon agenda is the wet blanket on our economy. And so the reality is,
that's the
more
second
people
time you
are
said wet
dying of
blanket.
bad climate change policies than they are of
Drink every time Vivek says wet blanket.
actual climate
Governor,
change.
Governor Haley, are you bought and
death
paid
rate is
for?
down by
Hold on, hold
98% in the last
on.
century.
Listen. Wait, hold on.
I've had enough. I've had enough
he said enough.
already tonight of a
That's the first time Chris Christie has ever had enough of anything.
guy who sounds like ChatGPT
Hello?
standing up here. And the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
Give me a hug just like you did to
The same
Obama.
type of amateur.
And you'll help elect me just like you did to Obama, too. Give me that
The
damn
same
hug, brother.
type of amateur.
Hold on. Governor Haley, would you like to respond? Are you
So
bought and
Brett,
paid
what I would
for?
like to say is the fact that I think this is exactly why Margaret Thatcher said, if you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman.
Oh my god. I just cringed so hard. I'm dead. I'm literally deceased from that. So, it made me a celebrity.
First of all, we do care about clean air, clean water.
Yeah.
We want to see that taken care of, but there's a right way to do it. And the right
No, the thing with it is, ma'am, is that we do care about those things and we implement those things in our country. We can't make other countries abide by our will. So climate change is a lost cause in that regard because we're never going to get China and India and countries in Africa and all over the world to abide by our regulations and our systems for clean air and clean energy. They don't give a rat's ass. Okay, that is the issue with climate change. So let's not appease the insane climate activists for something that's never going to get accomplished. Okay, it's a pipe dream, and I wish you would get off the pipe.
right way to do it is, first of all, yes, is climate change real? Yes, it is. But if you want to go and really change the environment, then we need to start telling China and India that they have to lower their emissions. That's where our problem is. And these
And they're sure going to listen to a woman, aren't they?
green subsidies that Biden has put in, all he's done is help China because he doesn't understand all these electric vehicles that he's done. What that done, half of the batteries for electric vehicles are made in China. And so that's not helping the environment. You're putting money in China's pocket, and Biden did that. So first of all, I think we need to acknowledge the truth, which is these subsidies are not working. We also need to take on the international world and say, okay, India and China, you've got to stop polluting, and that's when we'll start to deal with
Senator
climate.
Scott, are you bought and paid for?
Absolutely.
Are you bought and paid for?
He said absolutely.
Are you bought and paid for?
Absolutely not. I mean, here's what the American people deserve is a debate about the
He told the truth first, though. He said, absolutely, absolutely, I'm bought and paid for. Yep, you got me. You got me tagged.
issues that affect their lives. Going back and forth being childish is not helpful to the American people to decide on the next
Are the adults back in the room?
leader of our country. Number one, wait a second. And number two, as a kid who grew up in a single parent household mired in poverty, I wondered, was the American dream real for kids who are devastated by poverty, devastated by the challenges of life? I came to the conclusion that America can do for anyone what she's done for me if we focus on restoring hope, creating opportunities, and protecting America. If we want the environment to be better, and we all do, the best thing to do is to bring our jobs home from China. If we create 10 million new jobs in my Made in America plan, we will have a better economy and a better environment. Let me tell you why I say that, Brett.
No.
America has cut. I'm a Southern boy, I talk slow. So America, that was quick. America has cut our carbon footprint in half in the last 25 years. The places where they are continuing to increase, Africa, 950 million people. India, over 1 billion. China, over 1 billion. Why would we put ourselves at a disadvantage devastating our own economy. Let's bring our jobs home.
We have a lot of
Okay.
different topics to get
Yeah,
to.
we do. We thank you all. Thank you, Senator Scott. So coming up next,
This is horrible. These people are the worst.
the candidates will weigh in on what could be a defining issue in the 2024 campaign. The first Republican debate continues moments away.
These two aren't even moderating. Like, it's literally just a debate between the three guys in the middle with a little bit of chirping from Chris Christie and Tim Scott and Haley, Nikki Haley. The two on the end are just, there for decoration, I guess. Why is there no format or structure? I'm so confused. Is this a commercial or what? I want to go watch something. It's all the MAGA hats.
We've got to be a lot smarter in how we talk about women and how we show them that we care.
We're going to stand up for the unborn in Washington, D.C. And if you cannot do that, you should not be the nominee for the Republican Party.
You know what? You, sir, need to go back to Ukraine and crawl into your daddy Zelensky's lap.
This is a defining moment.
Do you trust our...
Yeah, great. Awesome. So let me mute this. And then we'll go watch some of the Trump and Tucker interview, because this is just god-awful. What do y'all think so far? If anyone's watching this, I don't know. Sorry, guys. I had major difficulties at the beginning trying to go live. This is probably just going to be posted, and people can watch it later if they want to, but I tried, and I just it was not working out for me. But
by 50 and 60 points. And, some of them are at 1 and 0 and 2. And I'm saying, do I sit there for an hour or 2 hours, whatever it's going to be, and get harassed by people that
You're so right.
shouldn't even be running for president? Should I be doing that? And a network that isn't particularly friendly to me, frankly. They were backing Ron DeSanctimonious like crazy, and now they've given up on him. I mean, it's a lost cause. It reminded me very much of 2016. In 2016, I went through the same stuff and had to fight them all the way, and then they became very friendly after I won, or just about when I was winning. But I just felt it would be more appropriate not to do the debate. I don't think it's right to do it. If you're leading by 50, 60, at one point I'm leading by 70 points, and I'm saying, why am I doing it? And I'm going to have 8 people, 10 people, whoever made the debate, I don't know how many it is, but I'm going to have all these people screaming at me, shouting questions at me, all of which I love answering, I love doing, but it doesn't make sense to do them. So I've taken a pass, as you probably noticed.
I did. I'm grateful that you did. It's interesting, though, because you spent a lot of your career in television.
Yeah.
You had a top show in television on NBC. But you don't feel the need now running for president to do television, obviously. Do you think television is declining?
Well, according to a poll that I guess we just saw, it just came out where it's down like 30, 35%, but I think they were referring to cable. I think cable's down because it's lost credibility. MSNBC, or as they say, MSDNC, is so bad. It's so wrong what they write and what they do and what they say. It's fake news, as I said. I think I came up with that term. I hope I did, because it's a good one. It's not tough enough anymore. It's corrupt news. Really what you do is called corrupt news, but somehow that doesn't play as nicely. But it is corrupt news. So you have MSNBC and you have CNN, who's absolutely doing no ratings at all. I mean, they're dead. But they're doing none because they don't have credibility. They really don't have credibility. Fox is way down, as you know. And the good old days are long ago. I will say this, it could come back, but they just don't have a lot of credibility, Tucker. You know that perhaps better than anybody. I think it was a terrible move getting rid of you. You were number 1 on television, and all of a sudden we're doing this interview, but we'll get bigger ratings using this crazy forum that you're using than probably the debate or competition.
When you say there are people on stage who shouldn't be running for president, who do you mean?
Name them.
Well, I don't want to really use names, but it wouldn't matter too much. A guy like, I call him Ada Hutchinson. It's Asa, but I call him Ada.
Why do you call him Ada?
I could tell you, but I don't want to get myself in a little trouble. But he's weak and pathetic, and he was, I never understood the guy, never knew him.
I would love to know
He was the
why.
governor of Arkansas, not a very popular guy. I don't know how but that state is such a great state. The people are so incredible in that state, and they love me and I love them. How does this guy get elected governor of Arkansas? But he's nasty always and has been. a guy like Chris Christie, a guy left with a 8%, think of it, 8% approval rating in New Jersey. Now he's running for president. And he runs solely on the basis, oh, let's get Trump. He's like a savage maniac. He's like a lunatic. And that's all he talks about. His poll numbers are very, very low. He's about 2%.
What's he like? You know him well.
I've been friendly with him over the years, but I couldn't give him a job because I just never trusted him very much. I was just never one of his people that really trusted him. I never gave him the job, and that's one of the reasons he feels so hurt and so betrayed. Aww. And I understand that. I really do. I understand it, but I never gave him. You know, he wanted to be different things. He was looking at different elements of the administration, and I decided I didn't want to do it. Smart. And now I'm glad I did, because you see, but you know, we had some great people. I had great people. We'll have even better people if we do this, because now I know Washington. Before I didn't know Washington. Right. But guys like Bill Barr were terrible. I mean, they were, I would say, Bushies. I say that with respect to the Bush family, but they were
let's not have respect for the Bush family.
Bushies, and it doesn't work out for us.
It was clear, this is kind of far afield, but it was just interesting. I read Barr's account of his time. He wrote a book about it,
right?
His autobiography, and in it he lies about Jeffrey Epstein's death. Clearly lies. Do you think Epstein killed himself sincerely?
I don't know. I will say that, you know, he was a fixture in politics.
Trump, what is this? Let's let loose. Okay, take your loosen up the tie a bit, unbutton the pants. I don't know what you're gonna do, but let's let it out. Let the animal out.
Palm Beach.
Yeah.
I don't know what Barr said about it either. I have no idea what he said. What did he say? He killed himself, probably?
He said he killed himself, and that they were going to do this investigation. They never did the investigation. It's never been public, and they hid it, and why are they doing that? And clearly Barr knew. But why would Bill Barr be covering up the death of Jeffrey Epstein?
Bill Barr didn't do an investigation on the election fraud either, okay? He said he did, and he pretended he did, but he didn't. McSwain, the U.S. attorney in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, said Barr just wouldn't let him do it. It was crazy. Barr became so petrified, so frightened of being impeached. We're going to impeach him. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
It's not a big moment in history. But they said, we're going to impeach. You know, they play a much rougher game, the left, the lunatics. And they were going to impeach Bill Barr, and he was petrified. Now, how do you not get impeached? Don't do any of this stuff. But he didn't do the job there. I don't know what he did with Epstein, but possibly he did.
Do you think it's possible that Epstein was killed?
Oh, sure, it's possible. I mean, I don't really believe. I think he probably committed suicide. He had a life with, you know, beautiful homes and beautiful everything, and he all of a sudden he's incarcerated and not doing very well. I would say that he did, but there are those people. There are many people. I think you're one of them, right? But a lot of people think that he was killed. He knew a lot on a lot of people.
He was killed. I think. So? I think the closer you look, I'm not a conspiracy person at all. I believe everything I hear. But yeah, the closer you look into it, I mean, the Attorney General of the United States, your Attorney General, clearly lied about the Epstein death.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Why?
He was certainly.
I love that for Tucker. You ask those questions and push on him. Thank you. We need some of this influence. Okay. I don't know what Trump's holding back right now. I feel it. I don't like it. You need to unleash and unload. Okay. Now's the time. It's, you know, it's giving a little cocked. I like where Tucker's energy's at. Very good. Let's see if the other one's back on. Okay, let's get back to these retards.
Options. Can't we all agree that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them? Can't we all agree that contraception should be available? And can't we all agree that we are not going to put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty if she gets an abortion? Let's treat this like a
That's so dishonest, because no one's doing that in this country.
Respectful issue that it is, and humanize the situation and stop demonizing the situation.
Brett, we're not mentioning Vice President Pence. Governor DeSantis, you signed a 6-week abortion ban in Florida. One of your biggest financial backers said that you need to, quote, shift to get moderates or you will lose. What do you say to him and others who say politically that is a tough thing to sell nationally?
Well, I would say we sold the biggest election landslide victory in the history of the Republican Party in the state of Florida in 2022. That's what I did. We can win. But second of all, look, you got to do what you think is right. I believe in a culture of life. I was proud to sign the heartbeat bill. I remember one of the most impactful moments of my life was when I heard the heartbeat of my oldest daughter in my wife's womb and then saw the sonograms of all three of my kids. What the Democrats are trying to do on this issue is wrong, to allow abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. I know a lady in Florida named Penny. She survived multiple abortion attempts. She was left discarded in a pan. Fortunately, her grandmother saved her and brought her to a different hospital. We're better than what the Democrats are selling. We are not going to allow abortion all the way up till birth, and we will hold them accountable for their extremism.
But just to be clear, Governor, would you sign a 6-week ban federally?
I'm going to stand on the side of life. Look, I understand Wisconsin is going to do it different than Texas. I understand Iowa and New Hampshire are going to do different. But I will support the cause of life as governor and as president.
Vice President Pence, you're shaking your head. Hold on, Senator. Vice President Pence, you're shaking your head.
Well, look,
These moderators are horrible. They're literally only calling on a few of these potential candidates, which is really kind of effed up. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I'm not new to this cause.
Oh, you're not?
After I gave my life to Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I opened up the book and I read, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And see, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses, now choose life." And I knew from that moment on, the cause of life had to be my cause. And I've been a champion for life in the Congress, a champion for life as governor and as vice president. And to be honest with you, Nikki, you're my friend, but consensus is the opposite of leadership. When the Supreme Court returned this question to the American people, they didn't just send it to the states only. It's not a states only issue, it's a moral issue. And I promise you, as President of the United States, the American people will have a champion for life in the Oval Office. Can't we have a minimum standard in every state in the nation that says when a baby is capable of feeling pain, an abortion cannot be allowed? A 15-week ban is an idea whose time has come. It's supported by 70% of the American people, but it's going to take unapologetic leadership that stands on principle and expresses compassion for women in crisis pregnancies. I'll do that as President of the United States.
He called my name, so I'll respond to that in seconds. So first of all, I will say it is in the hands of the people, and that's where it should be. But when you're talking about a federal ban, be honest with the American people. We haven't had 45 pro-life senators in over 100 years. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president could ban all those state laws. Don't make women feel like they have to decide on this issue when you know we don't have 60 Senate votes in the House.
70% of the American people support legislation
but
to ban
70%
abortion
of the
after a
Senate
baby is
does
capable
not.
of experiencing pain. It's just going to take leadership.
70% of the Senate does not. You have to be honest with the American people.
It's never going to happen.
Let's get Governor Bergman for one minute here. But the Supreme Court did.
And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be mad at some sort of abortion ban, but I don't believe in federalism. I think it should be at the state level. It's our job to change hearts and minds of people, and there's still going to be those who are unreachable. But to try to enforce something at the federal level, it gives me the ick, and I think it's wrong, and these people are retarded.
Overturn Roe v. Wade. And the result of that decision was that it went back to the states. So that's where it is right now. So as I understand it, you are not in favor of a federal ban. What do you say about the states? There's about 5 of them, including New Jersey, I think a few others, that allow abortion up until the time of birth, though. If you were president, would you be able to abide that?
Well, first of all, I'm a pro-life governor of a very pro-life state. And this issue is, of course, very important. But I am on the record, and I stand behind that we should not have a federal abortion ban. We should not. And the reason why we shouldn't is very simple. It's the 10th Amendment in the Constitution.
Oh, God.
In the Constitution, which the...
No, he did not just pull out a pocket constitution. Okay, LARPer.
States created the federal government, not the other way around. It says that there were certain duties allowed to the federal government delegated to them by the states. The rest are left to the states, comma, or importantly, or to the people. We need to get back to freedom and liberty for the people in this country. And we can't have Republicans who fight for 50 years for this great cause to return it back to the states, and then the next day they turn around and go, no, the feds should do that, because the feds are stepping into people's lives, they're stepping into people's businesses. Over and over, if we say that the Fed should be in on this one, where do we stop? I say that we follow the Constitution, and this is returned to the states. This is where it should be.
But Governor Burgum, you signed a 6-week ban. Time out. You signed a 6-week ban. Governor Burgum, you signed a 6-week ban. So you're saying federally, it's all going to go to the states.
Yes, and what is going to work in New York will never work in North Dakota, and vice versa. That's why 50 states. That's why 50 states.
This is too important of an issue that I have to address. First of all, the Supreme Court gave it back to the elected representatives, whether it's the states or whether it's the United States Congress. So there is authority, and that's why President Biden is pushing for a Democrat proposal, which is, in essence, abortion on demand through the term. So they have their extreme position at a national level. It's most likely going to be addressed in the states, but it's certainly fine for it to be addressed at the national level as well. Arkansas has the record of being the most pro-life state in the nation. I signed 30 pro-life pieces of legislation while I was governor. And every state can determine a different outcome here. And it is the most important issue for women and for the unborn child and for our country that we get this right. It's going to be a continued debate. Let's talk about it in terms of compassion, in terms of protecting the life, and also understanding how we have to enhance adoption services, how we have to enhance maternal care. Those things we've done in Arkansas and are important for our nation's future.
There are a lot of issues that are very important. Senator, I'll let you weigh in.
We cannot let states like California, New York, and Illinois have abortions on demand up until the day of birth. That is immoral. It is unethical. It is wrong. We must have a president of the
Okay, but then Gavin Newsom in 10 years will come to power and say the same thing about your state. That we cannot allow conservative states to do X, Y, and Z. We can't allow them to have guns. We can't, it's just, that guy was right. Whatever Doug, I think his name was. You can't allow the federal government to get as big as they have gotten in the past and as they are now, and just continue to keep giving them more power. It's like, it's ridiculous at this point. It's like, absolutely not. This is what the Constitution was built on, was states' rights to make these decisions. Stay in your lane, okay? I just hate these, people that want these big government overreaches, and they want the government to decide all of these issues that should be states' issues. It's stupid.
United States who will advocate and fight for, at the minimum, a 15-week limit. I am 100% pro-life conservative. I have 100% pro-life record. I got to tell you, though, we must fight for life. Our Declaration of Independence says our Creator gave us inalienable rights that include life. That is a list. That is an issue we must solve. We can't leave it to Illinois. We can't leave it to Minnesota. We can't leave it to Illinois. We must solve that issue with a 15-week limit at a minimum.
I think we're all pro-life, but what I would love is for someone to ask Biden and Kamala Harris, are they for 38 weeks? Are they for 39 weeks? Are they for 40 weeks? Because that's what the media needs to be asking.
All right, another issue is America and the crime crisis, the homelessness crisis. American cities are in decline. People are moving.
They wouldn't even ask Biden about his crackhead son. Get real, lady.
Moving out as homelessness, drugs, crime move in. There are problems accelerated. They did accelerate during the pandemic and are still rising, actually.
Murders in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, all up 30% between 2019 and 2022. Homelessness is up 11%, the largest jump in recorded history. Vice President Pence, a lot of this began in the COVID era. How much of what we're seeing happening around this country is a result of those COVID lockdowns? And is your administration in part to blame for how we got here?
Well, I think what's in part to blame is the Democrats have been talking about defunding the police for the last 5 years. And we ought to be funding law enforcement, particularly in our major cities
So the homeless problem in our country was caused by COVID lockdowns. Okay, make that make sense to me, please, because that is the most stupid point I've ever heard in my whole entire life. If these Democrat cities would get their shit together and make this kind of thing illegal and start enforcing it, we wouldn't have the problem. It's so stupid that woman just tried to literally link the homeless problem in America to the Donald Trump administration. Absolute trash.
Unprecedented levels. I mean, it's extraordinary to think about the violence that's claiming innocent lives literally every week in every major city in this country. And yet Democrats and liberal prosecutors in major metropolitan areas continue to work out their fanciful agendas, to do bail reform and go easy. What we need is strong commitment to law enforcement. We need leadership in Washington, D.C. that'll marshal the resources of the states, marshal the resources of the American people. But let me also say it's about opportunity. I mean, a lot of people don't know that those Trump-Pence tax cuts that we got signed into law go away at the end of 2025 if we don't have a Republican president and a Republican House and a Republican Senate. When I'm president of the United States, we're actually going to cut taxes further. We're going to extend those tax cuts, and we're going to close the Federal Department of Education, block grant all that funding back to the states. With a growing economy and educational choice and law enforcement, we will bring our cities back.
Governor Christie, another issue. This weekend here in Milwaukee, reports say there were 30 shootings, and a number of them including kids. Add that to the big increase in school shootings around the country. Democrats blame this crisis on easy access to guns. They also blame Republicans for blocking gun control legislation. What would President Christie do?
You know, I'm proud of the fact, Brett, that I'm the only person along with Governor Hutchinson up on this stage who's actually running United States Attorney's Office. I ran the 5th largest office in America in a state where there is significant urban crime. And the problem is not going to be solved by more money. The problem is that these prosecutors in these localities in the states are refusing to do their job and to arrest violent criminals. So what a President Christie would do is appoint an attorney general who would instruct each of the 93 U.S. attorneys that they are to take over the prosecution of violent crime in every one of those cities that are failing to do so. We have plenty of room in the federal prisons to lock up these violent criminals and clean up what's going on all across this country in these individual cities. Secondly, what we need to make sure that each and every one of these criminals understand is that the laws apply to everybody. And when Hunter Biden fills out a fake application, a false application for a gun permit, and then is facing a 10-year mandatory minimum, which was mandated by legislation sponsored by his father, and then you have a Justice Department that walks away from those charges, we're telling people that the law doesn't apply to everybody. In a Christie administration, he would go to jail for 10 years.
What about a President Ramaswamy? What does a President Ramaswamy do about guns?
So the reality is we have a crime wave in this country and we know how to fix it. The question is, do we actually have the spine to do it? More cops in the streets who are on the streets able to do their jobs without looking over their shoulder for getting sued. And we also have a mental health epidemic in this country. Just over the same period that we have closed mental health institutions, we have seen a spike in violent crime. Do we have the spine to bring them back? I think we should. As president, I will. But it's not just drugging up people in those psychiatric institutions with Zoloft and Seroquel. It's a deeper issue. I think faith-based approaches can play a role here, too. We're in the middle of a national identity crisis. And I say this as a member of my generation. The problem in our country right now, the reason we have that mental health epidemic, is that people are so hungry for purpose and meaning at a time when family, faith, patriotism, hard work have all disappeared. What we really need is a tonal reset from the top, saying that this is what it means to be an American. Yes, we will stand for the rule of law. Yes, we will close the southern border where criminals are coming in every day. And yes, we will back law enforcement because we remember who we really are. And that's also how we address that mental health epidemic in the next generation that is directly leading to violent crime across this country.
Governor DeSantis, really quickly. Governor DeSantis.
We don't have an identity crisis, Vivek. We're not looking for a new national identity. The American people are the most faith-filled, freedom-loving, idealistic, hardworking people the world has ever known. We just need government as good as our people.
Well, Mike, I think the difference is you might have, some others like you may have on the stage, it's Morning in America speech. It is not Morning in America. We live in a dark moment, and we have to confront the fact that we're in an internal, sort of cold cultural civil
You
war.
are
And we have to
equating the
recognize
American
that
people
in order
with the
to actually
failed
win.
government in Washington, D.C. We just
Mike Pence, have you met Antifa? Have you met these raging LGBT lunatics that we live amongst every day? Are you fucking kidding me right now? There are still good Americans out there, but we do have a major crisis in this country of identity. And people aren't proud to be American like they used to be. They're not patriotic. They're not God-loving. You're so stupid. Mike Pence is literally the worst. I don't know how and who backs him. But, like, if you hear the crowd reactions, I mean, like, 2 people are cheering for him. He's a joke. Not even the fly came back to land on his head, because that's how much of a loser he is.
just need government as good as our people again.
So let me just finish addressing that slogan because I don't know what that slogan means. We need to shut down the administrative state. That's actually how we translate it.
Crime has been on the rise in Florida, Governor DeSantis. How do you stop crime?
Well, actually, crime's at a 50-year low in Florida. We're happy with that. Well, the statewide, it's a 50-year low. And so here's the thing. These hollowed out cities, this is a symptom of America's decline. And one of the biggest reasons is because you have George Soros funding these radical left-wing district attorneys. They get into office and they say they're not going to prosecute crimes they disagree with. The inmates start running the asylum. There's one guy in this entire country that's ever done anything about that. Me. When we had 2 of these district attorneys in Florida elected with Soros funding who said they wouldn't do their job, I removed them from their posts. They are gone. And as president, we are going to go after all of these people because they are hurting the quality of life and they are victimizing innocent people in every corner of this country. And it will stop when I get into office.
Okay. One more here before the break, Governor Burgum.
Rhett and Martha, I just thought it was interesting. You asked your question about the problems we're having in big cities. Nobody ever asked the question of what about the crime wave in small towns? Because in a small town, neighbors help neighbors. People understand each other. If a farmer gets sick, everybody comes together and helps them get the crop off. There's accountability. There's transparency. One thing that I think this country could use is somebody in the White House that understands small town values, because that's our road back to get this country on track again.
Governor Hutchinson.
As former head of the DEA, I understand the drug crisis in America. And right now, whenever you look at the challenges in our inner city, there's 3 simple words that would be helpful. 1, enforce the law when it comes to crime. Secondly, let's deal with the challenge of fentanyl. And it's both about stopping the fentanyl coming from Mexico, but it's also about education of our young people, making sure that we have the tools that are needed for addiction counseling. That's what we expanded in Arkansas as well. Whenever you look at the underlying challenge of America, though, no one likes to see an America with smash and grab in our inner cities. As President of the United States, that will stop. It starts at the top with the respect for our justice system that a former president who's under indictment has undermined by attacking judges, by attacking prosecutors, by attacking the system and saying he's aggrieved. And so we have to have respect for our justice system and the rule of law, and it starts at the top with the President of the United States.
Thank you. Hold on.
Take a break. So, speaking of that, right now you are looking live at Fulton County Jail, where former President Donald Trump will be processed tomorrow. So next, the candidates will have an opportunity to talk about the coming trials of Donald Trump.
Literally really cannot wait for the mugshot. The merch and the epic, t-shirts that will be made with that Trump mugshot are going to be a thing of beauty, guys. So I wanted to bring up this bingo card. I'm not sure how to even check things off on here, but I just thought it was funny, So keep your eye out on any of these. But let's go back to Trump for now and see what he's getting into. I'm gonna be honest, wasn't a great start with Tucker. He seems like he's holding back, but let's see what's good right now.
It wasn't well done. They had no cameras. They had no anything. Everybody was sleeping. And, a case could be made. Look, I'm not going to get involved in it, but I can tell you a case could be made either way, but it certainly wasn't the most well-run place.
So the reason I'm asking you is I'm looking at the trajectory since 2015 when you got into politics, for real, and then won. It started with protests against you, massive protests, organized protests by the left, and then it moved to impeachment twice,
right?
And now indictment. I mean, the next stage is violence. Are you worried that they're going to try and kill you? Why wouldn't they try and kill you, honestly?
They're savage animals. They are people that are sick, really sick. You have great people in the Democrat Party. You have great people that are Democrats. Most of the people in our country are fantastic, and I'm representing everybody. I'm not just Republicans or conservatives. I represent everybody. I'm the president of everybody. But I've seen what they do. I've seen the lengths that they go to when they make up the Russia, when that's exposed. And
it's not the Democrats. It's leftists. It's these lunatics that are the problem. I mean, most of us can coexist and get along no problem, and we all know that.
And they go down, and Barr should have gone after them, and other people should have gone after, and they did very late, because the Durham report came out. It was fairly good. It could have been a lot tougher, I guess, but it was fairly good. But it explained how corrupt it was. I'll tell you who did a great job was the Inspector General Horowitz. He did a phenomenal report. You didn't have to go to Durham. He did it on Comey and on, I guess, McCabe and some others, and it was a vicious, it was basically a true report, how bad they are. But these people are sick people. These are people that I think they hate our country. You want to know the truth? When you see open borders, when you see these policies that they have, and so many other things, it's so sad to see. And we have a country that's very fragile right now. I've never seen, I will say, look, I ran in 16, which was 15, but I ran in 16, election in 16, and there was tremendous spirit. In 20, there was even more spirit. We got millions and millions more votes. It wasn't even a contest. People said, well, what'd you think of 20? I said, we did much better. We did. You got to base it on the number of votes. We got many more votes in 20 than we did in 16. But the election was rigged. It was a rigged election. And with COVID, they used COVID to cheat in a lot of different things, and we have so much on it. It's so easy. But we had judges that didn't want to look. We had people didn't want to get involved. It was said they could he's a conspiracy theorist if you say anything about the election. But I have never seen spirit like there is right now. Even coming down here, just the people on the road that are just absolutely going crazy. And the reason is, I think they like me, and I know they love my policies. I hope they like me too. A lot of people say they don't like me, but they like my policies. I think they like me. But I have never seen spirit like it is right now. And the reason is because crooked Joe Biden is so bad. He's the worst president in the history of our country. I don't think he's going to make it to the gate, but you never know. But he's a corrupt person, so corrupt that I took the name off Hillary. I don't do two people at one time. I took the crooked Hillary and I retired the name. That was a good day for her. I bet she was very happy. And I used it for Joe because it's crooked Joe. But Joe is really...
But you don't think he's going to make it to November of 2024?
Well, I think he's worse mentally than he is physically. And physically, he's not exactly a triathlete or any kind of an athlete. You look at him, he can't walk to the helicopter. He walks. He can't lift his feet out of the grass. It's only 2 inches at the White House, right? It's not a lot. but you watch him and it looks like he's walking on
2 inches in his
toothpicks.
pants.
So, and then you see him on the beach where he can't lift a chair. You know, those chairs are meant to be light, right? They're like 2 ounces. You lift them up. He can't lift the chair. He can't walk to the chair. And I don't know what they're doing with the beach. You know, this beach is seeming to play a big role, but they love pictures of him on the beach. I think he looks terrible on the beach. He looks terrible on the beach.
Skinny legs.
Well, he can't walk through the sand. You know, sand is not that easy to walk through, but when he walks through it, he can't walk through the sand. And there's somebody in there that thinks he looks fabulous at the beach. I think he looks horrible at the beach. Plus, the beach doesn't represent what a president's supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be working. You're supposed to be getting us out of that
Those are super facts.
horrible, horrible war that we're very much involved in with Russia and Ukraine. You could do that.
Nobody wants to see Joe Biden with his shirt off, okay, and his balls out on the beach. Nobody wants to see that.
And you could do that very easily. I believe you could do that I don't believe he could do it because he's just incompetent. But that's a war that should end immediately, not because of one side or the other, because hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. Can you imagine you're in an apartment house and rockets are going into that building and blowing it up and knocking it down? And why should anybody, human beings, whether they're Russian or Ukrainian or whatever they are, it's got to be stopped. And it can't be stopped very easily. It would have never started. If I were president, it would have never started.
So back to Biden, I'm interested. So you think he's failing? He obviously is failing. I think it's clear to everybody. But that would make Kamala Harris the candidate?
Well, not really. I mean, I guess they'd have maybe a free-for-all. A lot of people say she has to remain for certain reasons the candidate. She has to. I don't think that's true, actually. I don't think that other people would stand for it. She has some bad moments. Her moments are almost as bad as his. I think his are worse, actually.
Yeah. She seems pretty senile, too.
She speaks in rhyme. It's weird. It's weird. But she has bad moments. And
in rhyme?
Well, the way she talks, the bus will go here and then the bus will go there because that's what buses do. And it's weird. The whole thing is weird. This is not a president of the United States future. And I think they probably have some kind of a...
I love Tucker as an interviewer. He's so good. He's like not afraid to push back on anyone. And I just love that. It's very refreshing.
primary and other people will get involved.
Newsom, right? I mean,
Could be. I mean, you know, I always got along well with him, believe it or not. But could be him, could be somebody else. He's got a big load on his shoulders because you look at California, what's happened.
He's got a big...
But I don't know if the American people really, the people that vote for him, I don't even know if they care. You know, you look at so many of the things that are going on, and people don't seem to be... In the old days, if you had a bad record, it meant a lot. Today, if you have a bad record, it doesn't...
He's got a big old policy in California. And it's not good.
This second hour of this GOP primary debate, policy discussions the Americans want to hear you all on. China, Ukraine, immigration, education. But we are going to take a brief moment and talk about the elephant not in the room.
Former President Trump has been indicted in 4 different states on 91 counts. He will be processed tomorrow in Georgia at the Fulton County Jail for charges relating to the 2020 election loss.
You all signed a pledge to support the eventual Republican nominee. If former President Trump is convicted in a court of law, would you still support him as your party's choice? Please raise your hand if you would.
Oh, let's see some hands. Yes! Hello? Oh, yeah, you better get that hand up, Rob. And you better put it all the way up. Lift it higher. Let's go. These three on the end, you're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're a disgrace. We don't want you. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's right. Keep them up. That's right. Okay, high five.
So just to be clear, Governor Christie, you were kind of late to the game there, but you raised your hand?
No, I'm doing this. Look.
He barely.
Look, I'm doing this.
And I know you didn't.
No.
What's
And no, look, here's the bottom line.
Girl.
Someone's got
What?
to stop normalizing this conduct.
What are you talking about?
Okay? Now whether or not you believe that the criminal charges are right or wrong. The conduct is beneath the office of President of the United States.
What conduct? Be specific.
And you know, this is the great thing about this country. Booing is allowed, but it doesn't change the truth. It doesn't change the truth.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you raised your hand supporting.
I'd like to get in and respond. Let's just speak the truth, okay? President Trump, I believe, was the best president of the 21st century. It's a fact. And Chris Christie, honest to God, your claim that Donald Trump is motivated by vengeance and grievance would be a lot more credible if your entire campaign were not based on vengeance and grievance against one man. And if people at home want to see a bunch of people blindly bashing Donald Trump without an iota of vision for this country, they could just change the channel to MSNBC right now. But I'm not running for president of MSNBC. I am running for president of the United States. We're skating on thin ice, and we cannot set a precedent where the party in power uses police force to indict its political opponents. It is wrong. We have to end the weaponization of justice in this country.
30 seconds, Governor DeSantis.
You know, let me tell you
I'm sorry, 30 seconds, Governor
You
Christie.
make me laugh because you sit here in an answer. You sit here in an answer. You sit here and answer.
Go ahead, Governor Christie.
Hold on, Governor Christie.
Hold on.
So listen, the more time we spend doing this, the less time they can talk about issues you want to talk about. So let's just get through this section. Governor Christie.
You sit here talking about how you want to stand up for the rule of law.
Yes.
And you know, Fox News people, if y'all wanted to talk about the issues that people care about, y'all would have never brought up Donald Trump. Y'all didn't have to cover that. Y'all didn't have to put that as a question, okay? So give me a fucking break. You guys wanted the reaction, y'all wanted the moment, and now y'all have it. So stop trying to rush people along and now say, oh, well, we don't want to spend too much time talking about Donald Trump. Y'all brought it up, motherfuckers. Shut up.
And law and order. And the
Sorry
fact
for
is
cursing,
that it
guys.
can't be
I
selective.
apologize.
In your book, you had much different things to say about Donald Trump than you're saying here tonight.
That's not true.
No, it is very true.
That is not
It's
true.
very true. I
Who
read
likes
it,
you?
and
There's
I
a
know.
difference
Look,
between
I
bad
got it.
behavior and illegal
By the way,
behavior, Chris, and you as a
by the way,
prosecutor should know that.
Yeah, you know what? I know a lot
There's
better.
a difference between
I
bad
know-
behavior. And
I know a lot better than you do. You've never done it like you've never done anything to try to advance the interests of this government except to put yourself forward as a candidate tonight. And here's the thing. We've stood up for law and order. I did it as U.S. attorney. I did it as governor. And I am not
You've never been a mayor before, you know, so what are you even talking about? What are you saying, Chris Christie?
going to bow to anyone when we have a president of the United States who disrespects the Constitution. He said,
Joe Biden?
he said,
Get your MSNBC contributors.
he said,
These are
he
politicized
said,
indictments, and we have to call out the truth.
Martha, it's important to say that the president
it's not.
said, Donald Trump said, it's okay to suspend the Constitution.
What are you
Now, the
talking
oath you
about?
take is to preserve, protect, and defend, not suspend. I will always stand up for our Constitution, regardless of the political pressure.
We have another question for you. We're going to get everyone in on this issue, but I have another question. I have another question. Hold on, you will. All right. So President Trump's former vice president is on this stage tonight. He has faced hecklers on the campaign trail over his actions on January the 6th. On that day, the vice president moved forward with the certification of the election. So do you believe that Mike Pence did the right thing, Senator Scott? Do you believe he did the right thing?
Absolutely. He did the right thing. Number one. Number two, we should be asking ourselves a bigger question about the weaponization of the Department of Justice. When I'm president, the first thing I'll do is fire Merrick Garland. Second thing I'll do, fire Christopher Wray, because we need Lady Justice to wear a blindfold. Without that, no one has confidence in our justice system. 17% of Republicans have confidence in our Department of Justice. Here's why. We keep seeing not only the weaponization of the Department of Justice against political opponents, but also against parents who show up at school board meetings. They're called, under this DOJ, they're called domestic terrorists.
Firing Christopher
But that's not it. But that's not
shut
it.
down the FBI.
Mr.
Actually have the courage to get it right.
Let me finish my comments.
Winning people
Not
over.
only that, in addition to that, we see the SWAT team show up at pro-life activist homes with guns drawn because this DOJ uses their power, uses their authority, not just against political opponents, but against conservatives and conservative causes. It is time for a change in America, and I will bring that change to the greatest nation on God's green earth.
We have an important
But Governor
question still to
DeSantis, do you
answer.
believe that Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th?
So here's what we need to do.
God.
We need to end the weaponization of these federal agencies.
Right, but
And I will do that.
That's not the question.
I know, but here's the thing.
can answer the
This
question.
election is not about January
Rein 'em in,
6th of
rein 'em in.
2021. It's about January 20th of 2025 when the next president is going to take office. I know what the Democrats would like to do. They want to talk about all these other issues, but we've got to focus on your future. We've got to focus on reversing the decline of our country. I learned in the military, I was assigned with U.S. Navy SEALs in Iraq, that you focus on the mission above all else. You can't get distracted. So Republicans, we've got to look forward and we've got to make sure that we're bringing the message that can win in November 2021.
That bell is a discrimination bell because they sure didn't ring it on Tim Scott. They're being real choosy with that bell, okay? I'm going to say it again. These moderators absolutely suck.
Did not answer the question.
Vice President Pence,
Why don't you do like the poll, like poll them, ask them to raise a hand if you did the right thing or not. That works pretty well. You get to know what people are going to actually say or do and think without having them just spew a bunch of word salad all over everyone. This format is horrible. People are just answering whatever question they want to answer, talking. Whoever wants to talk is talking out of turn. People are not talking at all in some cases. This is just a shit show.
what do you think, Vice President?
Is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I think the American people deserve to know whether everyone on this stage agrees that I kept my oath to the Constitution that day. There's no more important duty. So answer the question.
I've answered this before.
So yes.
Why are we? Mike did his duty. I got no beef with him. But here's the thing: is this what we're going to be focusing on
I relieve.
going
We will.
forward? The rehashing of this. I'll tell you,
Governor
the
DeSantis.
Democrats would love that,
We
and they
spent-
will win if we
Governor
let them get away
DeSantis,
with
we-
it. I'm not
Okay,
letting
Rob.
him
That's a good
in the
answer.
basement.
That's pretty good, Rob.
We're going to run him ragged around this country, and we're going to hold him accountable.
Let me just say, Governor DeSantis, we spent an hour talking about policy. Former President Trump is beating you by 30, 40 points in many polls. So it is a factor in the GOP primary. Governor Hutchinson, you did not raise your hand.
I did not raise my hand because there's an important issue we as a party have to face. And over a year ago, I said that Donald Trump was morally disqualified from being president again as a result of what happened on January 6th. More people are understanding the importance of that, including conservative legal scholars who says he may be disqualified
So I guess this guy right here thinks he's the moral authority. Okay.
under the 14th Amendment from being president again as a result of the insurrection.
ridiculous.
This is something that could disqualify him under our rules and under the Constitution. And so obviously I'm not going to support somebody who's been convicted of a serious felony or who is disqualified under our Constitution, and that's consistent with RNC rules. And I hope everybody would agree with me.
We're going to move on. No, we're going to.
Martha, can I answer the question?
Can I get in on that?
Okay, I'd like to answer.
You have already been on
Hang
it,
in
Vice
there.
President Pence.
All right, I'd like to answer the question you asked and not give a pre-canned speech. Mike Pence stood for the Constitution, and he deserves not grudging credit. He deserves our thanks as Americans for putting his oath of office and the Constitution of the United States before personal, political, and unfair pressure.
Chris, if you want to do butt stuff with Mike Pence, just say that, okay?
And the argument that we need to have in this party before we can move on to the issues that Ron talked about is we have to dispense with the person who said that we need to suspend the Constitution to put forward his political career. Mike Pence said no, and he deserves credit for it.
Okay. Governor Haley, we haven't heard from you on this. Do you agree? Do you agree that Vice President Pence did the right thing that day or not?
I do think that Vice President Pence did the right thing, and I do think that we need to give him credit for that. But what I will also tell you is, look, I mean, when it comes to whether President Trump should serve or not, I trust the American people. Let them vote. Let them decide. But what they will tell you is that it is time for a new generational conservative leader. We have to look at the fact that
Don't look at the polls, guys, and what they're telling you. Don't look on social media. Nikki Haley's got the real in on what Americans think.
3/4 of Americans don't want a rematch between Trump and Biden. And we have to face the fact that Trump is the most disliked politician in America. We can't win a general election that way.
What are you talking about? Can y'all move on? Get this man's name out your mouth. Like, this is making me mad.
Governor Burgum, opportunity.
Happy to answer the question. Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th. But I would say you started off the top of this hour saying we're going to talk about China, Ukraine, education.
you.
We are. China is the number one threat to our country. And every minute that these 8 candidates spend talking about the past instead about the future is time that is just you know who loves it? Biden loves it, but China loves it when we're talking about the past.
Okay. As promised, we were going to spend a few questions on it, let people say what they wanted to say. And now, indeed, we are moving on to the subject.
The U.S. has committed nearly 77.
Can I speak on this issue? I was.
You answered on this issue.
You did say
answer.
something.
Yeah.
We thought you were done, but you
No, I
please.
wasn't done.
Well, Mike, why don't you say this? Join me in making a commitment that on day one you would pardon Donald Trump. I'm the only candidate on the stage who had the courage to actually say it. That is how we move our nation forward
I don't know
and
why
turn the
you
page
assume that
forward. That's
Donald
exactly
Trump
right.
will be convicted of these crimes.
You should be able to make a commitment. The same justice system that was this
Vivek,
corrupt.
There's a difference between you and me.
Yeah, I'm not a professional politician. That's the difference. You can answer a question.
I've actually given pardons when I was governor of the state of Indiana. It usually follows a finding of guilt and contrition by the individual that's been convicted. So,
I like how you just derailed Mike Pence.
look, if I'm president of the United States, we'll give fair consideration to any pardon request. But if I may,
Hurry up!
it's not about looking back at January 2021.
Jesus, take the wheel.
It's about January 20th, 2017.
Hello?
I put my left hand on Ronald Reagan's Bible. I raised my right hand.
Okay, we don't
And I
care.
took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I know you're fucking
And it
lying.
ended with a prayer, so help me God. It was a promise that I made to the American people, but I also made it to my Heavenly Father.
Oh my God.
Every day for 4 years, I sought to keep that oath.
This is what you
And
had to
everyone
say?
on this stage needs to make it clear whether or not they'll do the same if they earn this job and the confidence of the American people.
This is what you just had to say?
Now, look, I've made it clear. I had hoped that the issues surrounding the 2020 election and the controversies around January 6th had not come to this, had not come to criminal proceedings. I would rather they had been resolved by the American people and the American people alone. But no one's above the law, and President Trump is entitled to the presumption of innocence that every American is entitled to, and we will make sure and extend that to him. But the American people deserve to know that the president asked me in his request that I reject or return votes unilaterally, power that no vice president in American history had ever exercised or taken. He asked me to put him over.
Okay, so you heard that right. No vice president had ever exercised or taken. Not that no vice president had ever had, because the truth of the matter is, as vice president, he did have the authority to do what Trump was asking him to do. And that wordage just now, that what he just said was important. And that's the key moment in this whole filibuster that he's doing that is literally putting all of America to sleep right now as we speak. He said no other vice president had authorized or utilized, whatever the fuck he said, but they do have the authority. They changed the law after 2020. But at one point, there was the ability for a vice president to return the votes and the electors to the states. That's the fact of the matter. Donald Trump did nothing wrong.
With the Constitution. And I chose the Constitution, and I always will. I have no right to overturn the election, and Kamala Harris will have no right to overturn the election when we beat them in 2024.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
It's so not worth it.
Now we are moving on to other issues.
Thank you.
The U.S. has committed nearly $77 billion in aid to the Ukraine war.
Jeez.
The administration is now asking Congress for $24 billion more. Regardless of that, the specifics of that plan, is there anyone on stage who would not support the increase of more funding to Ukraine?
Raise hands.
We wouldn't need
not
Europe.
support it.
Europe needs to step up. I mean, I would have Europe step up and do their job.
Mr.
High
Ramaswamy.
five again. I like him.
But you're saying you would not too, Governor DeSantis?
I will have Europe pull their weight. Right now, they're not doing that.
Would not support
and I think we need to do. And I think our support should be contingent on them doing it.
Okay.
And I would have support in China to be able to take China and do what we need to do with.
Oh my God, Vivek he is clowning right now. Why are you doing Indian Trump, dude? Like you are. Okay, all right.
China.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you would not support an increase of funding to Ukraine?
I would not. And I think that this is disastrous that we are protecting against an invasion across somebody else's border when we should use those same military resources to prevent across the invasion of our own southern border here in the United States of America. We are driving Russia further into China's hands. The Russia-China alliance is the single greatest threat we face. And I find it offensive that we have professional politicians on the stage that will make a pilgrimage to Kyiv, to their Pope, Zelensky, without doing the same thing for people in Maui or the south side of Chicago or Kensington. I think that we have to put the interests of Americans first.
Let this man cook, Brett Baer. Shut your ass up.
Secure our own border instead of somebody else's. And the reality is, this is also how we project strength by making America strong at home.
All right, we heard the names. Governor Christie first.
All right. Look, I did go to Ukraine, and I went to Ukraine because I wanted to see for myself what Vladimir Putin's army was doing to the free Ukrainian people. And let me tell you, I want you all to look around this arena tonight and imagine that every one of these seats was filled. And if every one of them was filled, there would still be 2,500.
So you're saying that there's really nobody there to come and watch y'all? So you're saying it's like half empty? Okay.
More children outside to make over 20,000 who have been abducted, stolen, ripped from their mothers and fathers, and brought back to Russia to be programmed to fight their own families. They have gouged out people's eyes, cut off their ears, and shot people in the back of the head, men, and then gone into those homes and raped the daughters and the wives who were left as widows.
Excuse me. Now they're about to piss me. Now they're about to piss me off real good. What about all the people that are getting raped and human trafficked at our southern border? What about all the crime and the murder that's happening at our southern border, sir, Chris Christie? You care more about a foreign government of Ukraine and what it is they're going through. There's still almost 1,000 people missing in Maui. Okay. Get your fucking priorities straight, you piece of shit. Everyone but Vivek right now, y'all can all really go, honestly. And, like, Rob, you need to get your shit together. And he was right. You are just like a feather blowing in the wind. Get a solid position on this and let us know what you're going to do, or else you're utterly doomed for the rest of your political career.
And orphans. This is the Vladimir Putin.
What about our country?
This is the Vladimir Putin who Donald Trump called brilliant and a genius. If we don't stand up against this type of autocratic killing in the world, we will be next.
You were mentioned.
Governor Haley, we'll come back.
Vice President Pence was mentioned. You get 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, let me be clear. Anybody that thinks that we can't solve the problems here in the United States and be the leader of the free world has a pretty small view of the greatest nation on
Okay, you
earth.
said that already.
We can do both, Vivek.
You've said
We've
that
done
already.
both.
We've heard that
We've
point.
been the leader of the free world and the arsenal of democracy for years. The Reagan Doctrine years ago made it clear. We said, if you're willing to fight the communists on your soil, we'll give you the means to fight them there so our troops don't have to fight them. Vivek, if we do the giveaway that you want to give to Putin to give him his land, it's not going to be too long before he rolls across a NATO border, and frankly, our men and women of our armed forces are going to have to go and fight him. I want to let the Ukrainians fight and drive Putin and the Russians back.
We don't have possession over Ukraine to give it to anybody. We don't have possession over Ukraine to give it back to the Ukrainians or to give it to Vladimir Putin. You know, we honestly have no control whatsoever. If you ask me, we shouldn't have any control. We should let those countries hash whatever differences out they have on their own. We're not the world's police. I'm sorry, you war-mongering loser. We're not, okay?
I want to just briefly address Pence, Vice President Pence. I have a newsflash. The USSR does not exist anymore. It fell back in 1990. The real threat, you talked about the communists, and the real communists that we have to address right now is the
idea what Vladimir Putin's aims are.
You already spoke. Now I actually have something to say.
Vladimir Putin has been saying he wants to reestablish the old Soviet sphere of influence.
Vice President.
I'm sorry if I insulted him by calling him a communist. He is a dictator and a murderer, and the United States of America needs to stand against authoritarianism.
Mr. Ramaswamy, 30 seconds.
Respond. The real threat we face today is communist China, and we are driving Russia further into China's arms. The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest threat we face. Nobody in either political party is talking about it, and I am the only non-neocon on this stage who will keep us out of war.
Mr. Vice President, we can't hear. Mr. Vice President,
is to give Russia everything they got.
Mr. Vice President,
give them a promise that Ukraine will never be in NATO, and then somehow
Mr. Vice President,
China will not think about taking Taiwan. We achieve peace through strength.
Mr. Vice
America needs to stand for freedom.
Okay, here we go.
I think we need to establish some ground rules
When we hear this bell, that means your time's done. So, Mr. Vice President, we appreciate your aggressiveness here. 30 seconds is 30 seconds. Mr. Ramaswamy, you were mentioned. You get 30 seconds.
So the reality is that today, Ukraine is not a priority for the United States of America. And I think that the same people who took us into the Iraq War, the same people who took us into the Vietnam War, you cannot start another no-win war. And I do not want to get to the point where we're sending our military resources abroad when we could be better using them here at home to protect our own borders, protect the homeland.
All right.
That will be my top priority in foreign policy.
We gave you
protect
more
this
than the 30
homeland.
seconds in the rebuttal. So I do want to get to some other people because everybody, we respect everybody's time here. So Governor Haley, you did not raise your hand, meaning that you would support more funding for the Ukraine war. You have said of Governor DeSantis that you didn't appreciate it when he initially called it a territorial dispute. Why?
First of all, the American president needs to have moral clarity. They need to know the difference between right and wrong. They need to know the difference between good and evil. When you look at the situation with Russia and Ukraine, here you have a pro-American country that was invaded by a thug. So when you want to talk about what has been given to Ukraine, less than 3.5% of our defense budget has been given to Ukraine. If you look at the percentages per GDP, 11 of the European countries have given more than the U.S. But what's really important is go back to when China and Russia held hands, shook hands before the Olympics, and named themselves unlimited partners. A win for Russia is a win for China. We have to know that. Ukraine is the first line of defense for us. And the problem that Vivek doesn't understand is he wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. He wants to let China eat Taiwan. He wants to go and stop funding Israel. You don't do that to friends. What you do instead is you have the backs of your friends. Ukraine is the front line of defense. Putin has said, once Russia takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. That's a world war. We're trying to prevent war. Look at what Putin did today. He killed Prigozhin. When I was at the UN, the Russian ambassador suddenly died. This guy is a murderer, and you are choosing a murderer over a pro-American country.
Lady, you people are murderers. Y'all don't think your policies are getting anyone killed? Is that a joke? Is that a joke? This grandstanding, I'm so sick of it. Really, like, both political parties are absolute garbage. Republicans are just as bad as Democrats, truly. You know, at least they're more, or it used to be, there were more anti-war Democrats. Nowadays, pretty much everyone's pro-war because everyone's getting fed off of the military-industrial complex. So it's absolute trash. It's gaslighting. You people don't care about Ukraine. You don't care about defending freedom. Ukrainians don't even have freedom. Zelensky says there's not going to be an election as long as the war's being fought, which could be 20 years. I mean, we were in Iraq for 20 years. It's a joke. Let's worry about what's going on here and the threats that are coming from within. And that's what Americans want, I feel like, for the most part. Am I right? Y'all let me know, please. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm getting all hot and bothered over here because these people piss me off.
First of all,
Mr. Ramaswamy, you have 30 seconds. Mr. DeSantis,
Nikki, I wish you well in your future career on the boards of Lockheed and Raytheon.
No, I'm not
but
on
the
boards
fact of the matter,
Lockheed and Raytheon. And you know,
Boeing came off of it, but you've been pushing this lie. You've been pushing this lie all week, Nikki.
You want to go and defund Israel? You want to
Okay, let me address that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to address each of those right now. This is the false lies of a professional politician. There you have it. So the reality is,
America less that you have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
and you know what? The foreign policy experience that you all have shows in the fruitless wars we've gotten into. I have to address that. So our relationship with Israel will never be stronger than by the end of my first term. But it's not a client relationship. It is a...
Who are these people in the audience? I just need to know. They've got to be Democrats.
A friendship. And you know what friends do? Friends help each other stand on their own 2 feet. So I will lead Abraham Accords 2.0. I will partner with Israel to make sure Iran never is nuclear armed. But you know what I love about Israel? And I've been there probably in the last 10 years more than most people on this stage. You know what I love about them? I love their border policies. I love their tough on crime policies. I love that they have a national identity and an iron dome to protect their homeland. And so, yes, I want to learn from the friends that we're supporting. And what puzzles me is, I want to learn from those and apply those to protect our homeland, Nikki.
Israel
that is the
needs
answer.
America needs Israel.
Okay, Governor DeSantis.
Are you kidding?
Governor DeSantis, you were mentioned in the territory.
America needs Israel. Guys, we wouldn't even exist. Don't you all know? America wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for Israel. I mean, we're basically Israel's little brother who gives, you know, Israel just gives us wedgies and, you know, gives us swirlies every morning before pushing us down the stairs on the way to breakfast, you know, because, you know, America, we don't need Israel. You know, America wouldn't exist without Israel. It's our very lifeblood. Okay, didn't y'all all know this? Absolute garbage. People like her should be ashamed of themselves, okay? Since when do American politicians feel so adamantly and passionately about other countries and don't have this kind of fire, this kind of, you know, rhetoric for our country? It's enraging, to be quite honest. And I'm sorry, I keep pausing a lot.
Dispute. Not only...
No, it's not a territorial dispute either.
Of the United States, your first obligation is to defend our country and its people. And that means you're sending all this money, but you're not doing what we need to do to secure our own border. We have tens of thousands of people who are being killed because, well, we're not handling both. And so I'm going to declare it a national emergency. I'm not going to send troops to Ukraine, but I am going to send them to our southern border. When these drug pushers are bringing fentanyl across the border, that's going to be the last thing they do.
And that should have been the applause break.
We're going to use force, and we're going to leave them stone cold dead.
We're actually going to move on to China. We're going to talk about China.
Okay.
Governor Burgum. China has the biggest navy in the world, the biggest army in the world. Now they have warships off the coast of Alaska. They are threatening Taiwan. In coming years, China will have 1,500 nuclear warheads, it's believed. The U.S. just arrested 2 sailors accused of spying for China within our military. So the question is, how would you deter China as a president, Burgum?
Well, this is the number one issue we're facing. And of course, we haven't been talking about it, and we act like that letting Russia win in the Ukraine is like a gimme as opposed to a gift to China. Russia has become China's gas station. But how would we do it? The Biden administration is a complete fail. China imports 10 million barrels of oil a day, more than any other country in the world. They do not even have all the food they need to feed everybody in that country, so they don't have energy security or food security. But the Biden administration sends Blinken, Yellen over there. They're over there. They don't even bring up energy because they're too busy trying to kill the U.S. energy here. And what we need to do is not meetings, not press releases, because something that would send a lot more than a press release is actually Harpoon missiles. We need anti-ship missiles on Taiwan. The way that you have a war never start, which is the goal, the way you have peace through strength, is that you actually have strength. You actually have deterrence. And what we have in what we've got going on in Ukraine is an example of when deterrence fail. What is an example there of Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the fact that he greenlighted Putin moving into Ukraine, and then now they see weakness, and when they see weakness, they make a move. And we have to be strong, and we have to be strong both in Ukraine, and we can solve the southern border. Absolutely, we can do that, because guess what? There's only 19,855 authorized people for the Border Patrol, but they're not all staff because the Biden administration doesn't enforce law enforcement. But Biden administration wanted to put 87,000 people in the IRS as opposed to giving the money and the support we need to our own Border Patrol.
Okay. Senator Scott, on China, that same question.
And I speak about China. Let's fire the 87,000 IRS agents and hire double the number of Border Patrol agents. I just left Yuma, Arizona about 2 weeks ago. The most pressing need of the American people from a national security standpoint is our southern border. It has led to the death of 70,000 Americans because of fentanyl, plus 6 million illegal crossings since President Biden has taken office, and 200 people on our national security watch list have been caught at our border. How many have not been caught at our southern border? If we just spend $10 billion, we could finish the wall. For $5 billion more, we can have the military-grade technology to surveil our southern border to stop the flow of fentanyl and save 70,000 Americans.
So why have we sent 77 billion, which is not even the correct number? We've passed more than that through legislation and bills that are being given through other measures. But in pure cold hard cash, why have we sent 77 billion to Ukraine? If what you just said would it only take 10 billion to build a wall, 5 billion to secure that wall, and to monitor the goings on there. So y'all are full of shit. It's utter clown world buffoonery that's going on. If y'all wanted to save American lives, y'all would have done it by now. If people really cared, it would already be done. Because we obviously had the funds to send to Ukraine, but not for our people, right? You guys are, I have words, but I'm not even going to say them.
A year. That should be the priority of this government. And as the next president of the United States, I will make that border wall complete.
There are many more questions on China. I do want to ask
I want to say I couldn't agree more. It's not just the 70,000 from fentanyl. We've lost 200,000 people to overdoses since Biden took office. That's 300 people a day. We're taking mass casualties, and that's a statistic, but these are sons and daughters, nieces and nephews that we're losing. We've got North Dakota troops down there flying night helicopter missions from San Diego to the Gulf Coast, trying to stop these transnational criminal organizations. They've got better funding on their side than we've got on our side.
Speaking of which, Governor Hutchinson, images from earlier this month, Governor Hutchinson,
with Mexico,
Vice President Pence, images from earlier this month. Vice President Pence, it really doesn't help. I'm asking a question. Earlier this month, images showed suspected cartel members crossing into Texas with rifles.
Yeah, look at that.
Do you consider this an invasion would you authorize lethal force along that border?
Let's hear it.
There would be lethal force used by the Border Patrol, law enforcement as needed to protect the border. Absolutely. When you look at the military has to be used for intelligence gathering purposes. This is not unusual. Whenever I was in the Bush administration, we went down there and met with President Vicente Fox of Mexico and asked his help in going after the cartels. And he looked at me and said, they're a problem to us as well. And so we joined together and we took down the Ariana Felix brothers leading the Tijuana cartel. And that made a difference. Ramon was shot and killed and Ben Amin was captured. Cooperation makes a difference. We cannot be successful going against the cartel unless we bring in Mexico as a partner. We have to use economic pressure to accomplish that. President Obrador has not been helpful, and we have to use economic pressure that this administration is not using. The rule of law has to matter on both sides of it.
Okay.
This is critical. I've done it. We know what needs to be done. The military has to be limited in its use. When after 9/11, we had the global war on terror, and guess what? We protected the border at the same time. You can do both.
Okay, let's go to Governor DeSantis. So as president, would you support sending U.S. Special Forces over the border into Mexico to take out fentanyl labs, to take out drug cartel operations? Would you support that kind of American military use?
Yes, and I will do it on day one. Here's the thing. The cartels are killing tens of thousands of our fellow citizens. You want to talk about a country in decline? You have the cartels controlling a lot of part of your southern border. We have to reestablish the rule of law, and we have to defend our people. The President of the United States has got to use all available powers as Commander-in-Chief to protect our country and to protect the people. So when they're coming across, yes, we're going to use lethal force. Yes, we reserve the right to operate. How many more tens of thousands are we going to let to die? I am sick. I've met angel moms throughout this country. I met a lady in Texas named Tracy, and her son took one Percocet that was laced with fentanyl, immediately died. That is happening all across this country because of the poison that they are bringing in. So as president, would I use force? Would I treat them as foreign terrorist organizations? You're darn right I would.
You know, Vice President Pence, why would you be better at this issue than Governor DeSantis? Governor DeSantis on the campaign trail refers to your administration as not finishing the wall.
Right. Look.
Yeah, because Congress blocked them.
We secured the southern border of the United States of America and reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90%. When Joe Biden took over, he threw open the southern border of the United States, and the wave of humanity, the wave of fentanyl that's been eloquently described here is a wave of human tragedy across this country. But Martha, you began this evening talking about who is best prepared to be the next president of the United States. And I have to tell you, with all humility, I was there when we negotiated through the government shutdown and got the funding available to build the wall. I was negotiating on Capitol Hill around the clock. I negotiated the Remain in Mexico policy on behalf of the President of the United States. And Asa, you're so right. It's because we used economic pressure to bring the Mexicans to the table, and they allowed us to have people wait in Mexico while they applied for asylum and ended asylum abuse overnight. We got the Mexicans to deploy their National Guard to their southern border and to our southern border as never before. And I want to promise you, as President of the United States of America, I will engage Mexico the exact same way, and we will partner with the Mexican military, and we will hunt down and destroy the cartels that are claiming lives in the United States of America.
Okay, thank you. Another issue that is related to this is that almost 7 million migrants have crossed this border, our southern border, during the Biden administration. So, Governor Christie, what would you do about the 7 million who are here? How would you handle them? What would you do?
Look, Martha, the first thing we need to do is to stop any more from coming.
That's the first thing we need to do. Then the next thing we need to do with the folks that are here is to, again, as we've talked about all night tonight, we have to have law and order in this country. We have to enforce the law. And what that means is to make sure that people who come here illegally are not rewarded for being here illegally. We have so many wonderful people from around the world who are waiting in line, following the law to try to come here and pursue the American dream. And those people are waiting and waiting and waiting because we haven't dealt with the problem of the folks who are here. We have to have them detained. We have to make sure that they are not rewarded for having broken the law. And one last thing on this fentanyl issue. With China, we can't take our eye off of that ball. Yes, it's important that we secure the border. Very important, as I just said. But China is sending these chemicals to these drug cartels for them to create the fentanyl that is killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens. The Chinese are engaging in an act of war against us, killing our citizens. We better make that priority one in our conversations with China and to try to straighten that relationship out, because if we don't, we're going to lose more and more of our citizens.
I just want to clarify, would you send those people back?
Of course. You'd have to.
We have a lot of issues that Americans care about. Next up, we're going to talk about the crisis in education, as millions of American children are not proficient in reading or math after this.
Lame. If it weren't for Vivek and even that guy Doug, he's a sleeper candidate or whatever. I mean, he's doing a thing. He's not horrible. I don't hate him, and I agree with some of the things he's saying. He seems more in line with Vivek's thinking, which I agree with a lot. I'm still very apprehensive of him because, he did kind of come out of nowhere. He came out of the woodworks and saying all the right things, and got to be apprehensive of those types of people. But let's get back to the orange man.
Doesn't really mean anything. He looks good. He's a nice looking guy, speaks well. But Biden, every time you watch him talking, it's like he's walking on eggs. You're waiting for him to collapse. And he almost always does. And I got to know the leaders of all of the countries, essentially, but the big ones. And the bigger, the tougher the leader. It's like sort of, I guess maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But I got to know President Xi of China and Putin and Kim Jong-un, North Korea. Did a great job with North Korea, kept us out of a nuclear war. We would have 40,000 dead soldiers right now. They'd drop a nuke right on top of the military base. But we have 40,000 soldiers over there. And I did great. I got along with him great. That's a positive. The press said, he said nice things about Kim Jong-un. I also said horrible things at the beginning.
Also, I just want to say Kim Jong-un would never do that because he knows that if he were to do that, his whole entire country would be wiped out by one nuke being dropped on his head. So he might be a little rocket man dictator, but he's not stupid.
Horrible enough that he wanted to talk. And we talked, and we met in Singapore. We met actually twice. And we had unbelievable meetings. I know him very well. We were in great shape with him.
What do you think he and Xi and Putin think of Biden?
I think they can't believe it. I think they probably say this is some kind of a system. They had great respect for our country. They respected me. They had great respect for our country when I was there. Every one of them. Look, if you go to North Korea, you take a look at what happened. The Olympics was dead. South Korea spent billions on the Olympics. Nobody was going to go. They didn't want to get blown up. They called me and they said, we are going to let the Olympics proceed. This is North Korea. I said, you should go into the Olympics. Put your athletes in. It wasn't like, they were big on athletes because,
famine.
But they went in and they actually participated. And within about 2 days, the entire thing was sold out. And if it wasn't me, that would have never happened. But I got along very well with him, and that's a positive thing. He does have massive nuclear power, by the way. And if Hillary would have gotten in, or if the Obama thought process continued, it would have been a nuclear war, absolutely, with North Korea. He was expecting to go into a war, and it would have been a nuclear war.
So do you think the rest of the world looks on at Biden and thinks someone else has got to be running the government?
Well, somebody else has to be. I don't think he's capable of doing anything. Look, when I debated him, I said, how come, and this was in front of probably not a friend of yours, Chris Wallace. He was the moderator.
Not a friend.
I said, why is it he wants to be Mike, but he doesn't have the talent? It's one of those
bitchy little man.
He wanted to be his father, but he didn't have the talent of his father was great. His father,
little fussy man.
His father interviewed me in 60 Minutes. It was actually a 10. Can you believe it?
I told you, his father had talent, at least.
I may have been the only guy that he gave a good 60 Minutes to. He was rough.
Really?
His father was tough. He was great, though. He was great at what he did. But Chris Wallace was so upset. He was guarding this guy who wouldn't do a show, by the way. He wouldn't do. I figured I didn't mind Chris Wallace because Biden wouldn't do a show. And it was very obvious. He kept asking him, but he wouldn't do the show. So I figured he's got to like me. But he came from a different planet. But remember when I asked the question, why is it that the mayor of Moscow's wife is allowed to give you $3.5 million? Don't forget, that was brought up. Now it's brought up all the time, but that was brought up by me long before anyone ever heard of it. I said, the mayor of Moscow's wife giving you $3.5 million. What did you do to deserve $3.5 million? To Biden. And Chris Wallace said, this has nothing to do with the debate. I mean, he
got in the way of the question.
No, it was crazy. And I said, well, wait a minute, he got $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. Now, people forget that, but if you go back and take a look, you will see. And Chris Wallace didn't want me to ask that question. I said, I think it's a very appropriate question. It turned out to be much more appropriate than people thought.
Amazing. So do you have a preference in, assuming you're the Republican nominee and all goes as you plan it to go, do you have a preference in who you run against?
In many ways, I'd love to run against him because his record's so bad. It's still horrible when you look at inflation and everything else, but others also have very bad records. I mean, California's a bad record, so, should it be Gavin or should it be somebody else? When I look at San Francisco, what's happened to that incredible city, that was one of the greatest cities in the world just a short while ago, and now it's very sad when you look at it. Los Angeles, every city practically, all the Democrat-run cities, Republican-run cities are doing very nicely, because they arrest people when you have crimes. And they don't go after political candidates because they think it's good. I mean, it's been amazing. My poll numbers are the highest I've ever had. But because people understand it.
Well, can I just ask you, that gets back to my original question. So if the protest didn't work, you got elected anyway. Yeah. Impeachment didn't work twice, obviously. Indictment is not working. Your poll numbers go up. When they raided Mar-a-Lago in August of last year, your numbers went up. They can indict you 20 times, and you're not going to lose the Republican primary because of that.
Well, it makes it look even more ridiculous. I mean, the 4 indictments, and maybe there'll be more. I don't know. These people are crazy.
But they're counterproductive. So if you chart it out, it's an escalation, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So what's next? After, try to put you in prison for the rest of your life, that's not working. So, don't they have to kill you now?
I think the people of our country don't get enough credit for how smart they are. And I'm not sure I would have said this 10 years ago, but they get it. They really get it. When somebody gets indicted, your poll numbers go down. When somebody gets indicted, you announce, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be leaving to spend time with my family and to fight for the rest of my life on this stuff. But you're out of politics. I got indicted 4 times. All trivia, nonsense, bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's horrible when you look and you look at what they're doing. The boxes hoax, I'm covered by the Presidential Records Act. I'm allowed to do exactly that. He's not covered, and he's got 25 times the number of boxes, and he's got them stored in Chinatown. He's got them stored in a flimsy garage underneath his Corvette at Penn. And by the way, at Penn, he gets millions of dollars. China pays this guy millions of dollars. See, I think he's the most corrupt president we've ever had, and he also has the distinction of being the most incompetent. And I believe both. I mean, he's both incompetent and corrupt.
So
I actually believe he's compromised because China knows so much about him. They know where the money comes from. They know where it is, who paid it, and they probably paid it. Well, they do pay Penn, and he gets $1 million. I think he takes $999,000 because keeps it a little bit under $1 million, like by $1.
I hope this is almost over. This is painful.
A lot of the problems that we've seen are because these lockdown states School for a year and a half. That was wrong. We stood up. I took a lot of fire for that. I was pilloried by the media, but I stood for our kids. And as president, I'll stand for you and your kids as well. But we have to make sure that what our schools are doing is focusing on solid academics. In Florida, we eliminated critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. We eliminated gender ideology from our K through 12 schools. And we have elevated the importance of American civics in teaching our kids about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. As president, I'm going to lead an effort to increase civic understanding and knowledge of our Constitution. We cannot be graduating students that don't have any foundation in what it means to be an American.
Mr. Ramaswamy, Mr. Ramaswamy, hold on, Senator Scott. You've said that the Department of Education, the FBI, the ATF, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the IRS, the Department of Commerce, many of these should not exist.
That's correct.
So to the education question, how would you deal with the crisis?
So look, we have a crisis of achievement. Let's shut down the head of the snake, the Department of Education. Take that $80 billion, put it in the hands of parents across this country. This is the civil rights issue of our time. Allow any parent to choose where they send their.
If Vivek actually were to really get in there and do even half of all of the what he's talking about, he would have me pretty close to sold, and that's saying a lot. But I just know how it's going to be. And and there's still the question of whether or not he's even compromised. But I'm just saying that, he does say all of the right things. And it does kind of make me a little bit suspicious. But I like what he's saying, and I hope he's for real.
Kids to school and the teachers unions at the local level to allow public schools to compete, and then revive our national identity where every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that frankly every immigrant, including my mother, had to pass in order to become a citizen of this country. And the fact of the matter is, look, there's a part of education policy that also rests with the family. I didn't grow up in money, but the word privilege gets used a lot. Well, you know what? I did have the ultimate privilege of two parents in the house with a focus on educational achievement. And I want every kid to enjoy that. So part of the problem is we also have a federal government that pays single women more not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house, contributing to an epidemic of fatherlessness. And I think that goes hand in glove with the education crisis as well, because we have to remember education starts with the family, and the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind.
Governor Haley has said that biological boys playing in girls' sports is the women's issue of our time. You said that even though you signed a ban on this in North Dakota, that there hadn't been one instance where it was actually needed. Are you saying that you think that too much is made of this issue?
No, I'm saying in North Dakota, we made a priority of protecting women's sports, and we've done that in our state. But I would absolutely do that. But I do think when we start talking about education and we think that we're going to have a federal government one size fits all, we're just completely losing track of the fact that education differs by states. Some school districts are doing a fantastic job, some less so. But the idea that every school district in the state and every teacher is somehow indoctrinating people is just false. When I was building a company from scratch, with small town kids, and we went, grew up in a town of 300, but we built a global company in 132 countries with over 100,000 customers. We listened to those customers. We spent time with them. We talked to them. We did that. And as governor, education is one of the biggest part of a state budget. So as a governor, I shadow a student. The night before I find out the student finds out, I'm going to go to every class with them. I don't sit and lecture school districts how to do it. I go and see the experience. And there's a lot of things that have to change. But what needs to change in education is it's innovation. We're doing it the same way we did it 50 years ago with innovation, not regulation. I would get rid of the Department of Education. I would give block grants to schools, but I'd give them on merit based on who's doing the most innovative. I just got done holding the 7th annual Governor's Conference on Innovation Education. You should see what the people are doing when you cut loose the red tape, get the burden off their back. They care. Teachers in this country, the vast majority of them care about those kids. They're working in low-paying jobs, and they're fighting for those kids and their families.
Governor Haley, you said that this is the women's issue of our time.
First, I'll tell you, as a parent, the one thing you want is for your child to have a better life than you did. And we can talk about all of these things, and there's a lot of crazy woke things happening in schools, but we've got to get these kids reading. If a child can't read by 3rd grade, they're 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we need to make sure we bring in reading remediation all over this country. We need transparency in the classroom because parents should never have to wonder what's being said or taught to their children in the classroom. Parents need to be deciding which schools their kids go to because they know best. And let's put vocational classes back into the high schools. Let's teach our kids to build things again. When we do that and we allow that innovation, that's when it'll get back. And yes, I will always say I am going to fight for girls all day long because strong girls become strong women. Strong women become strong leaders. And biological boys don't belong in the locker rooms of any of us.
The lightning round, and the first question is going to go to you, Vice President. So this is a lightning round of questions, 30-second answers, please. President Biden will be 82 years old on Inauguration Day. Nearly 70% of Americans say that he is too old to serve. Should presidents have to pass a mental and physical test in order to serve, Vice President Pence?
Well, it might be a good idea to have everybody in Washington, D.C. pass a mental and 30 seconds, no. The American people can make those judgments. But let me say, I'm running for president of the United States because we don't need a president who's too old. And we don't need a president who's too young. We need a president who's been there. We need a president who knows how Congress works, how the White House works, how states work. And on this education issue, Martha, I was fighting against No Child Left Behind when Republicans were doubling the Department of Education. I'll also shut down the Federal Department of Education. And when I was governor, we doubled the size of the largest school choice program in America. And we'll give school choice to every family in America when I'm in the White House.
This is a lightning round, Mr. Ramaswamy. I think you were mentioned there. You're 38. You're the youngest on the stage. You've said, and you just said, you want a civics test or public service for those under 25 to be able to vote. So the question is, do you want a mental acuity test for presidents over 75?
I believe in the people of this country to tell the difference between somebody who's an automaton and somebody who's actually a thinking agent in the White House, which we don't have in there today. And I will tell you, I want to address Vice President Pence's comment. I think we do need somebody of a different generation to lead this nation forward. Look at the way I've run this campaign. Going to the south side of Chicago, to Kensington, in the middle of Philadelphia, where traditional Republican candidates don't go. We have an opportunity to build a multi-ethnic, working-class majority to deliver a landslide, and I think I'm the only candidate in this race, young or old, black or white, to bring all of those voters along to deliver a Reagan 1980 revolution. We're going to do it in 2024.
Same question to you,
in a presidential election until 2020.
I will answer that. I will answer that.
30 seconds.
30-second quick answer.
You guys need to get control of this debate.
Everybody's going to get a chance.
Listen, we're getting control of the debate. This is a lightning round, not rolling thunder.
I'm sorry, what?
Governor Hutchinson, you have 30 seconds on the same question.
On education, first of all, look at Arkansas. We have to compete with China. I built computer science education. We led the nation in computer science education, going from 1,100 students to 23,000 students taking it. This is how you compete with China. As President of the United States, I will make sure we go from 51% of our schools offering computer science to every school in rural areas and urban areas offering computer science for the benefit of our kids, and we can compete with China in terms of technology.
Thank you, sir. This is coming to you. We're trying to do a quick round of different topics here. So, Senator Scott, faith is on decline in this country. You talked about it a little bit before tonight. So is there a role for a president of the United States in changing that? What would you do to change that?
Our nation was founded upon the Judeo-Christian values that has made this the greatest nation on God's green earth. I'm a big believer in Ephesians 3:20 that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or imagine. Our responsibility should be to model the behavior we want others to follow. On education, the only way we change education in this nation is to break the backs of the teachers' unions. They are standing in the doorhouse of our kids, locking them into failing schools and locking them out of the greatest future they could have.
As president, Governor DeSantis, would you support some mandatory military service for all Americans?
I think it should be voluntary. I'm somebody that volunteered to serve, inspired by September 11th, and I deployed to Iraq alongside U.S. Navy SEALs in places like Fallujah, Ramadi, and it's something that I think has taught me, when you go in that type of environment, anything you have, your personal agenda, you check it at the door. You go there, and it's about focusing on the mission above all else. And guys come together, and they get it done. And that's how I would view being the president of the United States. It's not about me. It's not about all these other side issues. My sole focus will be on your future and reversing this country's decline.
Okay, now for something a little out of this world, and this is for you, Governor Christie. Do you believe that the recent spike in UFO encounters...
I get the UFO question?
Okay, we've been hearing a lot of testimony in Congress, and people are taking this a lot more seriously. And we're hearing that there are things going on that people aren't aware of. So, if you were president, Governor Christie, would you level with the American people about what the government knows about these possible
Look, Martha, and especially coming from a woman from New Jersey, I think it's horrible that just because I'm from New Jersey, you asked me about unidentified flying objects and Martians. We're different, but we're not that different. Look, of course, the job of the President of the United States is to level with the American people about everything. The job of the President of the United States is to stand for truth. The job of the President of the United States is to be a role model for our children and our grandchildren. And so whether it was UFOs or this problem of education, and Tim's right, by the way, and I started this in 2010 by going right after the teachers' unions in New Jersey and drove them down to an all-time low popularity rating because they were putting themselves before our kids. That is the biggest threat to our country, not UFOs.
Okay. Well, coming up, we've got closing arguments. Plus, right after the debate, Hannity is live from the spin room right here in the Fiserv Forum with reaction from all the candidates. As soon as they step off the stage, we'll be back after this.
My goodness. What a hot, steaming pile of dog shit. I can't. Oh my God. I need Trump to, hit me with a zinger or something.
But he, in many ways, is a Manchurian candidate. We have a Manchurian candidate, and he's afraid to tell Russia to get out of Cuba. He's afraid to tell China to get out of Cuba. He's afraid. China now is building, think of this, China's building military installations in Cuba. The Cuban population of Miami is not too happy because they're never going to be able to go back. And you don't even hear about it. And the worst culprit is the press, the media, because normally, when I first heard that China's building installations in Cuba, and installations means military installations, okay, they said just some communication. They did that on the islands with Japan. They took the island, they started this massive construction, and they told everybody, including the Japanese have to be very careful. They told everybody that this is a housing development. They're going to build a housing development. And I said, how come the runway is 20,000 feet long? Private jets need 4,000 feet. They don't need 20,000 feet. The big ones need 20,000 feet. They don't even need 20. And I looked at the runway. I said, that's the largest runway ever built, both in width and length, for housing development. There's nobody that has a plane that big that you would have a runway that's
Why is
for
China
testing.
allowed to conduct imperialism in our hemisphere?
Well, yeah, and it's far beyond Cuba. It's all over South America.
Yeah, in the Caribbean.
So we built a thing called the Panama Canal. We lost 35,000 people to the mosquito, malaria.
Yeah.
We lost 35,000 people building. We lost 35,000 people because of the mosquito. Vicious. They had to build under nets. It was one of the true great wonders of the world. As he said, one of the 9 wonders of the world. No, it was one of the 7. It happened a little while ago, It says 9 wonders of the world. You could make 9 wonders. He would have been better off if he stuck with the 9 and just said, yeah, I think it's 9. But this is one of the true 7 wonders of the world. And you take a look at the Panama Canal. It was such an incredible engineering marvel. We sold it under Jimmy Carter. We sold it to Panama for $1. The following day, they quadrupled the amount of money that ships had to pay to get across. They didn't lose one ship. And now they've made it much bigger, and now they've widened it. They've doubled it, right? They've more than doubled it. And it's one of the most profitable things. Any time it's just incredible, right? We gave it away for $1. China now controls it. They actually control the Panama Canal. They run it, they control it. And we shouldn't let that happen. And we can't let China be in Cuba. And they'll get out. If I'm president, they'll get out. Because I had a very good relationship with President Xi, but he respected this country, he respected me, and he'll get out. And we can't let them run the Panama Canal. We built the Panama Canal. Should have never been given to Panama. We should have had it. But we gave it for $1. Think of it. They quadrupled. In one day, they lifted the fees, which are, you know, pretty big for these massive ships to go through, right? Rather than going around the Cape and through all the tremendous storms, such beauty, such, you know, it's beautiful stuff. But you didn't want to get caught in those storms. Those were storms that wiped out the biggest ships. And we go through the Panama Canal, we built it, and we gave it away for $1. Think of that, how stupid are we? We have done the stupidest things in this country. And now we have a president that can't put two sentences together, can't speak, can't walk, can't talk. I don't think he gets to the starting gate, but these people do miracles. I mean, he ran out of his basement, and you got away with that one because of COVID, so he sort of got away with it. They cheated on the election. But you have people that are very smart, but they're fascists and they're radical left lunatics, and they're destroying our country with the all-electric cars and the windmills all over the place, which, by the way, don't work, and they're all, most of them made in China. For the most part, they're made in China. Germany a little bit, but China. But you look at what's happening to our country, even no voter ID. I mean, why don't they want voter ID? There's only...
We know why. We know why, you orange devil, you. And I mean that lovingly. They don't want voter ID because how else are they going to stuff the ballots, the fake ballots?
One reason they don't want voter ID because they want to cheat. I mean, who doesn't want, you know, the Democrat convention, the last one, they had voter ID that was this big. It looked like a prison card, this big on their chest. You walked in, they had your picture, your this, your fingerprint. They had everything. The most incredible voter ID I've ever seen. That was to get into the Democrat National Convention. But to get into vote, if you buy groceries, if you buy practically anything now, you have ID on a card, credit cards or otherwise.
But that, don't you think it's racist to have to show your ID?
Well, they probably say that. They use anything not to show ID because voter ID is pretty simple. And we could go back, and we should go back to all paper ballots, voter ID, same-day voting. You know, France did it. France had mail-in ballots, and it was terrible. Anytime you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have massive cheating on your elections, anytime, not just the presidential election. Anytime you have...
Isn't that the whole point of them? So
yeah.
you can
Oh,
cheat?
yeah, sure. It's the whole point. That's their whole point. They want to cheat, yeah. They have to cheat because their policies are so bad that if they didn't cheat, they couldn't get elected. Who wants open borders? Who wants high taxes? Who wants high interest rates? Who wants to not be able to use a gas stove? Or have to drive an electric car, which, you know, you have a 4-hour drive, but the car only goes an hour and a half, so you have to charge it. The happiest moment for somebody in an electric car is the first 10 minutes. In other words, you get it charged, and now for 10 minutes. The unhappiest part is the next hour because you're petrified that you're not going to be found to another charger. People, I'm saying if people, I'm not knocking electric cars, they're fine. They're fine. But if people want to buy a gasoline car or a hybrid, hybrids are pretty good, actually. But they should be allowed to buy. They don't want to do any of this. So right now, California's in a big brownout because their grid is a disaster. The grid all over the country is sort of a disaster, but the grid in California. And yet...
Years ago, 70% of American adults said they were extremely proud to be an American. That number has now plummeted to just 39%. In his pitch to get to the Oval Office, President Reagan called America the shining city on a hill, a beacon of hope and optimism.
So in your closing statement tonight, please tell American voters why you are the person who can inspire this nation to a better day. These are 45 seconds, and we begin with Governor Burgum.
I understand why America's hurting. Biden's inflation is choking us. I grew up in a small town. My dad died when I was a freshman in high school. My mom, widow of 3, went back to work. Every job I had growing up was one where I took a shower at the end of the day, not at the beginning of the day. Our cities are less safe because of the fentanyl pouring into this country. Our economy is being crushed by Biden's energy policies, which are raising the cost of every product you buy, not just the gasoline at the pump. One thing that I'll do as president I'll secure the border. I'll get this economy sprinting, not crawling like it is right now. And I would say that other thing is for sure, when I'm on a horseback in the Badlands of North Dakota, it looks like the horizon is just limitless. And when you can almost see beyond that horizon, you can see that this great country, our future is unlimited. But we've got to focus on innovation, not regulation. We've got to cut the red tape. We've got to drive ourselves forward. The way we win the Cold War with China is by growing our economy and through innovation. And as president, I will bring out the best of America. I will improve every American life.
Well, you'll be back on your horse soon, Governor.
Governor Hutchinson?
Our nation is in trouble, and it's in trouble because of failed leadership. And the solution is not 4 more years of Joseph Biden. The solution is not 4 more years of Donald Trump.
It's not you.
The solution is new leadership that can bring bold ideas to America and to bring out the best of America. A president's #1 responsibility is to bring out the best of our people. That's what Ronald Reagan did. And he did it with optimism and hope for our country, with a consistent conservatism. That's exactly what I bring. As president, I'll bring out the best of America in terms of individual responsibility, building our economy, in terms of securing our border, enforcing the rule of law. I'll bring out the best of America in terms of our national character, our faith, and our hope for the future. Join in this fight, asa2024.com.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
Thank you. I was a disillusioned young man growing up in a single-parent household mired in poverty. I wondered if the American dream was real for a kid like me. I can stand before you today and say the dream is alive, it is well, and it is healthy. I have the good fortune of a mom who works 16-hour days, making sure we have food on our tables. She taught me that if you're able-bodied in America, you work. If you take out a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to jail. And if God made you a man, you play sports against men. I'm Tim Scott.
Wow.
I'm asking you for your vote, and if you're in Iowa, I'm asking you to caucus for me. You can go to votetimscott.com for more information or to make a contribution.
No.
Governor Christie.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Martha. Look, everybody on this stage wants to be the next president of the United States. And the only way that's going to happen is if we beat Joe Biden. I'm the only one on this stage who's ever beaten a Democratic incumbent in an election.
Oh, wow.
I did it in a deep blue state, being outspent 3-1. Beating a Democratic incumbent is not easy. The last Democratic incumbent president who was defeated was Jimmy Carter. And he was defeated by a conservative governor from a blue state who knew how to get results, who stood for the truth, who cared about accountability, and stood strong and hard against waste. Those are the very things that I did in my 8 years as governor of New Jersey, and it's exactly what I'll do as president of the United States. Believe me, the Democrats want some other nominee who's never beaten a Democratic incumbent. I'm the one who can win this race, and if you give me the chance, I will restore our country by winning it.
Thank you. Governor Haley.
Several weeks ago, I dropped my husband, Michael, a combat veteran from Afghanistan, off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they had never been, all in the name of protecting America. If they are willing to protect us from there, we should be willing to fight for America here. I will beat Joe Biden, and he knows that. I will strengthen our economy, and we'll bring this in.
So if your husband's deployed, who's going to take care of your kids if you're girl boss president lady? Okay, so no one?
Inflation down. We will put transparency in the classroom. We will secure our borders. We will have the backs of our law enforcement, and we will make sure we have a strong national security. And once again, we will make sure we have an America that is strong and proud. We have a country to save. Join us. Go to NikkiHaley.com, and let's get it done.
Absolutely.
Vice President Pence.
Who are these people cheering for Nikki
Thank you,
Haley
Brad
like
Martha.
this? A
This
joke.
evening. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, shut up.
Joe Biden has weakened America at home and abroad. The disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the war on energy, runaway spending that launched the worst inflation in 40 years, a crisis at our southern border, an assault on our values and liberties, and the American people have had enough. But I know we can bring it back. But different times call for different leadership. The Republican Party owes the American people a choice. Proven leadership at the national level that knows how to move a conservative agenda forward. We proved in the Trump-Pence years you can turn this country around faster than you can imagine. And I have faith we will again. Because I have faith in the American people, the good, decent, hardworking, faith-filled, idealistic people of this country. And I have faith that God is not done with America yet. And if we will renew our faith in one another and renew our faith in Him who has ever guided this nation since we arrived on these wilderness shores, I know the best days for the greatest nation on earth are yet to come.
Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy.
I was born in 1985, and I grew up into a generation where we were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways that we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common set of ideals that set this nation into motion in 1776. And this is our moment to revive those common ideals. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to man. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. Thanks for letting me introduce myself tonight. Thank you.
Governor DeSantis.
Hello?
Governor?
Did you
This
have
is
an
our
aneurysm?
time for choosing. We will send Joe.
Ron DeSantis just stroke out? Wait, let me rewind. That was funny. What is going on? That was like, he just malfunctioned. Glitch McConnell moment.
Government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. Thanks for letting me introduce myself tonight. Thank you.
Governor DeSantis.
Hello?
Governor?
This is our time
Oh
for
my God.
choosing. We will send Joe Biden back to
He's a
his
bot.
basement and we will reverse the decline of this country. I'm a blue collar kid. I work minimum wage jobs to be able to make ends meet. I understand the importance of the American dream and I know how that slipped away from so many millions of Americans. We'll restore it. I'm a veteran who served in Iraq. I know what it means to put service above self. I'm also a dad and a husband to 6'5" and 3-year-old. I understand the importance of protecting parents' rights and the well-being of our children. In Florida, we showed it could be done. I made promises and I delivered on all of those promises. 2024 is make or break. We're not getting a mulligan. No excuses. I will get the job done. And as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you all.
I want to say thank you. Thank you to all the candidates on the stage tonight, and thank you to Milwaukee.
Thank you, everybody. We will see you on the campaign trail from debates to primaries to the general election and the conventions before that. Thanks for joining us. Sean Hannity from the Spin Room starts right now.
Take it away, Sean.
Take it away, Sean.
All right. Well, thank you both, by the way. Great job, Martha and...
Oh, wow, Rob just peaced out. He said, "Peace, suckers." He didn't even stick around for a handshake. What a little D-bag. That was hilarious. Rob just had a stroke live on stage. My goodness. All right, we'll watch a couple more minutes of this and then I'll get out of here because I've already been live for like 2 hours. My first time going live. So if you guys watched any part of this, I appreciate y'all.
They want to have in a very short period of time millions and millions of cars going off that grid, essentially. It doesn't work.
So plug your car into a grid that's failing.
You should be able to buy an electric car. You know, electric cars could be fine if you drive short distances and you want to have, you know, whatever, and you have plug-ins everywhere you go. They could be fine. But you got to have gasoline cars. You got to have everything. Let people buy everything. Now the new thing is your heating systems in the house. They don't want you to have a modern day heating system. They want you to use a heating system that will cost you at least $10,000 to buy and won't work very well. You know, none of the stuff works as well. One of the things I did with EPA is you have states, many states, most of the states have so much water. You know, it comes out of heaven, right? The water pours down and you have it. It's there. It's going to go wherever it goes, into the oceans, whatever. It's not like a big problem. Now, in some states, they have a problem. You know, you have some desert areas and all, and for that, it's okay. But they have sinks where no water comes out. You turn it on, no water comes out. No water comes out of the shower. No water is allowed to go into the washing machine for your dishes or for your clothing or what.
Something for brown water.
And I avoided all of that.
Wait, they have sinks where no water comes
Sure,
out?
you have restrictors. When I say no water, very little water. You want to wash your hands, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen this, and you turn on the sink and it's very little. Or you want to wash your beautiful hair, right? And you're standing under a shower. Then the suds never go. If the water comes out very slowly, I'm sure you've seen this. It usually takes place in new hotels and new homes.
Yeah, you take a drill and take the
They have
limiter out.
well, you can, but now they make it so you can't do that so easily. They have a restrictor. It's called a restrictor, and it restricts the water from coming out. So I ended all of that, and you have to see these. They let the water come out. You know what people do? They wash their hands like 5 times longer, or in the washing machine they'll press for their, let's say the dishwasher, they'll press it. Then they'll press it about 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
They'll end up using more water, and it still won't be very good. I met with the head of Whirlpool. They were practically going out of business during my administration, and they said to me, from Ohio, incredible, great state, I love Ohio, and they were really doing badly because people were dumping washing machines all over, mostly from South Korea, but also from China. And he was explaining it's just a terrible situation. I said, let me ask you, how's the quality? He says, we're better, but they are good enough quality. But, of course he's going to say that, but, they are better. He said, but they don't allow us. They're dumping these machines. They're cutting us in half. They're killing us. And on top of it, the government won't let us use water in our machines. I mean, he shows me like a quarter of a bottle of water. That's supposed to be washing clothing. And I freed it all up, and I put tariffs on these countries that were selling and the machines coming into the country. And that company went from all the washing machine companies, they make washing machines, they make dryers, they make all of the different machines that do this kind of work, including dishwashers. And they went from a disaster area to being just thriving.
But
they love me in that part of Ohio.
Well, I bet they do, but why should EPA, no one at EPA was elected by anybody, why do they have the power to decide how much water your washing machine uses? Shouldn't Congress in a democracy get to vote on that?
Yeah, you could say that. They do things that are not very...
So how do you, that's my question, how do you, if you get elected again, go back to Washington, how do you keep the agencies under control? How do you keep FBI and CIA specifically under control?
The way you do it, like I fired Comey, that was a big deal. A lot of people said, and I fired him very early. Somebody said, I wish you would have fired him. There's a real question about firing him anyway. You understand, because when they have a 10-year term, there is a question.
I'll answer that. We need to fire everyone, okay? That's the end. That's the beginning. That's the full stop. Fire everybody. Get rid of all the agencies, most of them, like literally most of them, and get it done. Start from scratch. Blow this thing up, and, let that be the end of it. But what do you guys think? I'm going to jump out of here because, I've been on here for a long damn time. Thank you to anyone who watched, if anyone is still here. I don't even know. Honestly, this was kind of a shit show moment, like me trying to go live. I don't really know what was happening. I was probably talking to myself the whole time, but I do appreciate y'all, and hey, I had a good time with my own commentary. So if, if you guys watch this on a replay, thank you. If you can go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, do all of the things.